It seems like something you would see in a movie. One of the world's most secure prisons built to house the worst of the worst offenders. They live in solitary confinement in purposefully designed cells to prevent prisoners from escaping or causing disruption. In other words, it's hell on earth. But this place isn't the invention of an author's imagination. It's very real. Hey all, and welcome back to our channel. Today we'll be going over the Florence Supermax, which is nicknamed the toughest prison in the world, and how it would be able to sustain El Chapo, the drug lord who has previously escaped 2 other prisons. Stay tuned till the end of the video to know more. The USP Florence Supermax, located near Florence, Colorado, is the United States federal government's Supermax prison, where they keep inmates who are too violent, too dangerous, or too much of a threat to national security to be kept anywhere else, and it is also one of the country's most controversial prisons. While some claim it makes everyone safer, including the prisoners, others have called it a clean version of hell and violate the U.S. Constitution's 8th Amendment barring cruel and unusual punishment. But why was this steel and concrete monolith built? How does it work? And who exactly is sent there? In the latter half of the 20th century, officials in the Federal Bureau of Prisons found themselves dealing with a problem. How do you punish criminals who have already been sentenced to life imprisonment and who committed murder while in prison in the past? The solution would have been to execute them. But capital punishment has been on the wane in the United States for years. For instance, only 3 people were executed by the U.S. federal government between 1963 and 2020. The problem is prisoners serving life sentences are among the most dangerous, often with a history of violence, and they have nothing to lose. This makes them dangerous to other prisoners and to correctional officers as well. Inmates have murdered 26 federal corrections officers in the line of duty. 2 of these officers, Merle Cutts and Robert Hoffman, were stabbed to death on October 22, 1983, by members of the prison gang, the Aryan Brotherhood of the federal prison in Marion, Illinois. At that time, the prison in Marion was where the federal government sent its worst offenders. It was an old-style open population prison with very little to differentiate it from lower security facilities except for the number of violent incidents. The murder of the 2 guards prompted Norman Carson, the director of the Bureau of Prisons, to take action. He ordered that Marion's prison be locked down permanently. He argued that the inmates who had murdered the guards were already serving life sentences, and sentencing them to additional time did nothing to deter them. The solution, therefore, was to keep them isolated from each other and the guards as much as possible until the Supermax prison had been born. Supermax prisons are designed to provide long-term, segregated housing for the worst of the worst, and those who head to Supermax usually don't leave. Some are going to be there for decades, but most inmates sent to Supermax are serving life sentences, one way or another. Almost every Supermax prison has a death row attached unless it's in a state that doesn't have the death penalty. A Supermax prison has several key characteristics beyond being for long-term sentences. Their administration is powerful and has wide latitude to keep the inmates under control. That includes punishment without the opportunity for appeal or outside overview. Activities are limited compared to other prison types, with few opportunities for recreation, college classes, or support groups like you might find in other prisons. Guess you'll have to wait for your next prison to pursue that law degree. It's extremely rare for an inmate to be sentenced to Supermax at trial unless they're considered a pressing security risk to the public. Most inmates are sent there after extensive trouble at other prisons. Before ADX Florence, El Chapo had been in and out of 2 maximum security prisons in Mexico. And no, he didn't finish his time. He escaped in the most dramatic way possible. The first prison he spent time in was Puente Grande, maximum security prison outside Guadalajara, and he was arrested in 1995 for a bloody shootout in Guadalajara airport. 2 years prior, El Chapo lived like a king in that prison, enjoying everything he had. At the same time, he was free to get good food, women, and sports, and run his drug trade with ease. Still, the Mexican government caught wind of the corruption and decided to extradite him to the U.S. as long as he wouldn't be given the death penalty. El Chapo knew what an American prison meant, so he planned a ridiculously simple escape plan. On January 19, 2001, El Chapo was wheeled out of prison in a laundry basket by a guard. After El Chapo's first escape, another 13 years passed before the drug lord was again captured. This time, it took a joint effort between the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration of the DEAs and Mexican Marines. The date of his capture was February 22, 2014. This time, no windows were there, and inmates were not allowed to talk to each other. They were not allowed to reach out to family members either. El Chapo spent 23 hours in solitary confinement, in a cell that had one bed, one shower, and a single toilet. Any visitations by the family had first to be approved by a judge, and the only luxury he was afforded was 48 for personal hygiene products. Still, even with all these restrictions, a little over a year later, El Chapo escaped again. He had found a blind spot for the security cameras in the cell bathroom. El Chapo's men, led by his wife, had been digging a mile-long tunnel for 4 months that lay directly underneath the shower. With the help of a smartwatch that someone had smuggled in, he could pinpoint the exact location of his criminal tunnels. Again, there is no way he would be able to escape using this way in ADX Florence, and some of the reasons El Chapo was able to get his gang members to build a tunnel underneath the second prison. He escaped from there because he had bought the land around the prison there in Mexico. Also, the prison had a blind spot. But Florence had no blind spots. It is a fortress that cost $60 million to build. It is surrounded by rocks on all sides, and there is an army base for it, Carson, just a couple of miles away from the prison. For extra measure, there is no way on God's green earth that El Chapo will buy land around a prison that the federal government owns. His men would find it difficult, if not impossible, to drill a tunnel in that region, and who is going to smuggle a watch for him? In ADX Florence, that would be impossible because guards are not allowed to interact with the inmates under any circumstances. Range 13 cells that El Chapo and other unfortunate inmates like him have to endure life in Range 13. Range Life 13 is so bad that former guards have disavowed the prison, calling it inhumane. And it's not inhumane for the reasons you think. The only kind of torture in ADX Florence is isolation and deafening silence. The prison is the way the worst goes. In ADX, inmates are locked up 23 hours a day in a 7 by 12-foot cell that features a desk, stool, and bed. Each piece of furniture is made from the same material as the cell, from poured concrete. The cells are also soundproofed, so inmates can't communicate with anybody except their imagination. It's also constructed to be so deliberately disorienting that the prisoners never know where in prison they are. Inmates will find it hard to hurt themselves in this cell even if they try. The sinks come without taps, so they can't be turned into weapons. The toilets shut off if clogged, and the showers run on a scheduled timer. Each cell also has a window 4 inches wide and 4 feet long that is designed to prevent a prisoner from knowing exactly where in the facility they're located, hindering any escape planning. As a further security measure, the inmates are rotated into different cells every 3 months. While at Florence, prisoners aren't permitted visitors and usually aren't permitted to have any contact with the outside world. Not even through letters or phone calls, Florence has been called escape-proof because of its heavy security. It has over 1,400 remote-controlled steel doors and motion detectors, and cameras are everywhere in the control center. Corrections officers monitor the inmates 24 hours a day. They have a panic button that can trigger a prison-wide lockdown that shuts every door in the prison if they suspect an escape attempt is in progress. If by some chance a prisoner makes it out of the building, they still have to contend with the perimeter featuring pressure pads and a 12-foot high fence topped with razor wire, as well as regular patrols of armed guards who are trained to shoot to kill rather than allow a dangerous prisoner to escape custody. There is a reason why Florence Supermax is called Alcatraz of the Rockies. No inmate in the history of the facility has ever escaped, and from the way things look, El Chapo's case will be no different. He might have escaped twice in the past, but this time it's safe to say that those days are over. Saying that we have come to the end of this video. If you like this video, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. We will come again with new exciting episodes. Until then, bye.